I wonder if you've got what I call a favourite dream. And what I mean by that is just at the point when you're falling asleep at night that you try to force yourself to dream your favourite dream. Well, I haven't got time to ask you what your favourite dream might be, but I thought I'd tell you what my favourite dream was when I was kind of your age. So when I was your age, my favourite dream was this. I used to dream that I was Superman and I could fly across the houses. Well, of course, I'm not Superman, I can't fly across the houses. But in my story this morning, the person in my story, he had a favourite dream, and his favourite dream was this. He used to dream that he'd been shipwrecked on a desert island with nothing to do all day except, well, mainly just to laze around in the sun working on his suntan. Maybe a little bit of fishing to get something for supper. Pick the occasional coconut if you got too hot to go for a swim. But mostly just chillaxing. Well, one day he was dreaming his favourite dream. And he heard someone call out his name. So he kind of sat up, rubbed his eyes, looked all around, and well, there was nobody there. Well, that's strange. I could have sworn I heard somebody calling out my name. Oh, well, maybe I was just dreaming. And he went back to sleep again. But just as he was dropping off, it happened again. He sat up, looked all around. He went and looked out the window, couldn't see anybody. He opened the door, stuck his head out, looked around, and still couldn't see anybody. He thought, I could have swore I heard somebody calling out my... Oh, maybe it's God, he thought to himself, because God does speak to some people like that sometimes. So he said, yes, God? And you know, it was God. And God said to me, he said, hey, Joe, because that was his name. Well, not hey, Joe, his name was Joe. God said, hey, Joe, look, I've got a special job for you. I've chosen you especially because I want you to go to the city of Nineveh and to tell all the people there that I've been watching them and I've seen all the bad things that they've been doing and saying and thinking, and I'm really unhappy with all those things. And if they don't stop doing all those wrong things, I'm going to knock down the walls of their city to punish them. Well, Joe thought about it for about a nanosecond and he said, actually, God, do you mind if I don't go? Because, well, I know what you're like. You're a God of love and you love everybody. And if I go and give them your special message, they'll say sorry. You won't knock down the walls of their city. And, well, quite frankly, I'd quite like you to knock down the walls of their city because they're our enemies. And some of my ancestors have been killed in battle. And I said, Joe, come on. That's not the right attitude. You're absolutely right. I am a God of love, and I love everybody from every tribe and nation. And so that's why I've chosen you, especially to go to the people of Nineveh with my special message. Now, come on, go and get your suitcase packed. So Joe got his suitcase packed. And as he was walking down to the ticket office to get his ticket, he suddenly had a bright idea. When he got there, he looked this way, and then he looked that way. And when he thought nobody was looking, instead of getting a ticket to go on a train to go to Nineveh, he got a ticket to get on a boat going in the opposite direction. Now, he went on board quickly, went down into his cabin, sat there on his bunk and went, whew, I hope God didn't notice me getting a ticket to go in exactly the opposite direction to the way that he'd asked me to do. And that was a bit silly, really, wasn't it? Because, I mean, we know, don't we, that God knows everything that we do. He knows all the good things that we do, and he knows all the bad things that we do as well, doesn't he? And you know, all those bad things that we do, say and think, they create kind of like a barrier that kind of stops us from knowing God as a special friend, stops us from going to live in heaven when we die. It's kind of as if we're kind of down here somewhere, and God's up there, and there's a great big barrier that divides us from knowing God. Well, it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, it was lovely and warm. The birds, they were twittering. The waves were just really small, very just gently lapping the side of the boat. And as Joe sat there in the boat, with the waves lapping him, he began to feel really sleepy. And soon, Joe was fast asleep. Shortly after that, the captain gave the orders and they cast off the ropes and they set sail. And when they got right out into the ocean, the captain looked. And he noticed something that looked a bit like this. And as he looked at it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger until the whole of the sky was covered in a great big black cloud. The sun disappeared. The wind began to pick up. And as the wind began to pick up, the waves began to pick up and get bigger and bigger. In fact, as the waves got bigger and bigger, they got so big that they spilt over onto the next page. There's a great crash of thunder, a flash of lightning. And the captain called out and he said, "All hands on deck. All hands on deck." I don't know why captains always speak like that with their hand in front of their mouths. They always seem to do it. Anyway, all of the sailors, they came up and they stood there on the deck and they stood there like this. Well, actually, they didn't so much stand like this. They stood more like this. Because you see, the boat was going up and down, and up, and down, and up. So much so that I'm beginning to feel nauseous just thinking about it. Anyway, the captain said to all the people, he said, "Now listen, somebody on board this ship must have done something really bad. For God to send a storm completely out of the blue like this, he must be trying to punish somebody. So I need all of you to say sorry to your gods, and maybe God will forgive them, whoever that is, and take this storm away." So all the sailors, one by one, they began to say sorry to their different gods. One man knelt down to just a funny shaped bit of wood, and guess what happened? Nothing. The next man, he knelt down to a funny shaped sort of like a carving out of stone, and he prayed to that, and guess what happened? Nothing. And then one by one, they knelt down to different gods and prayed to different supposedly gods and meditated on all sorts of things, and guess what happened?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. "Hang on a minute," said the captain, "there's something wrong here. What? There's somebody missing. Who's missing?" One of the sailors said, "It's Joe, sir. He's downstairs fast asleep." "What? This is no time for sleeping. Go and wake him up. Bring him up here." And so they went down and they woke Joe up, and up he came, and he stood there in front of the captain, and he stood there like, well, I don't know if you've ever been in trouble with the head teacher, and you've had to go into the head teacher's office. Suddenly, as you stand there, your shoes become really interesting, don't they? You stand there looking like this. And that's what Joe was like. He was looking down there at his feet, and the captain said, "Now listen, Joe, somebody on board this ship must have done something really wrong for God to send a storm like this completely out of the blue, so we're getting everybody to say sorry to their different gods, and maybe God will forgive them, take away the storm, otherwise we're all going to drown." Except the captain said it a bit slower than that. And Joe said, "Actually, Captain, it's me." "Oh, why? What have you done?" said the captain. And Joe said, "Well, God kind of told me that he'd got a special job for me. He wanted me to go to the city of Nineveh to tell all the people that all the wrong things they were doing, they're saying and thinking if they didn't stop doing them, God was going to knock down the walls of their cities." And the captain said, "But Nineveh, that's the opposite way where we're going." "Oh, I know," said Joe. And that's the trouble. "Oh, what are we going to do?" said the captain. "Well, Captain, you've got a problem. And the best thing you can do with a problem is to get rid of it." And you know, boys and girls, we've got a problem as well. It's that what problem we were talking about earlier on. All the wrong things that we do say and think that create that barrier that stop us from knowing God as a special friend. Well, that's a problem as well, isn't it? And if the best thing to do with the problem is to get rid of it, all we need to get rid of that. Now, the Bible tells us there's only one place where we can get rid of that barrier, and that's this place here. The Bible says the only place we can get rid of the problem is that cross, when Jesus died on that cross. You see, when Jesus died on the cross, he was being punished, not because he'd done anything wrong, he was being punished for all the wrong things that we all do and say and think. And because Jesus was punished in our place, if we want to, we can come to God in our prayers and say that we're sorry. And you know, the Bible promises that anybody that does that God will forgive them. And you can be special friends. Hang on a minute, said the captain. If the best thing you can do with the problem is to get rid of it and you're our problem, well, that means getting rid of you. But where can we get rid of you? Here in the middle of the ocean? Well, Captain, you'll just have to throw me overboard. I can't go around throwing fare-paying passengers overboard, said the captain. No, I tell you what we'll do. We'll jettison the cargo. That means throw all the goods and things overboard. So we'll jettison the cargo, we'll double the watch, and we'll try really, really hard, and we'll see if we can sail to a safe harbour somewhere. And so that's what they did. They jettisoned the cargo, they doubled up the watch, they tried really hard. But you know what? It didn't seem to make any difference at all. If anything, the storm just seemed to be getting worse and worse. Eventually, the captain came to Joe. He said, Joe, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to try it, because if we don't, we're all going to drown anyway. You're allowed to give people bumps these days. And they picked him up. 1, 2, 3. Joe went up. Can't whistle now. Joe came down. As soon as Joe hit the water, the wind began to drop. As the wind began to drop, the waves began to drop down. The clouds all parted. The sun came out. The birds began to twitter. The seagulls began to sing. Oh, I do like to be beside the... Sorry. I got a bit carried away there. That's not what seagulls sing at all, is it? And the boat sailed away into the blue yonder. Joe decided that he'd better start to swim. And as he began to swim, he spotted, just over there, something that looked a bit like this. Wow! It's my desert island! I've been dreaming about all my life. It's my desert island! Oh, this is brilliant! And he closed his eyes so he didn't get all salt in his eyes. He began to swim towards his desert island. Now, some of you have probably heard a very old film called Jaws, about a great big fish that used to swim around the ocean singing a little song that went a bit like this. Dun-dun, 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 dun-dun. Well, this was a friend of his called Gums. He used to swim around the ocean singing a little song that went a bit like this. Joe was swimming towards his desert island. His desert island was swimming towards him. Joe opened up one eye to see how close he was, and he opened up the other eye to look around. It was all really dark. Oh, this is great! My desert island has got a cave. Oh, it's brilliant, a cave. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, it is, it's a cave. He reached out his hands to touch the side of the cave, and fishy. And it smelled kind of fishy. Suddenly, Joe realised where he was. He was in the belly of a great big fish. And when he realised where he was, he sat down. I don't know where he sat, but anyway, he sat down and he said a very important word. This is the clever bit when we take a black paintbrush and we get colour letters. And this is what he said. He said, and if you can't see the words, you kind of put your head on one side like that, screw your eyes up, and you should see that it says, sorry. Well, do you think Joe was saying sorry to the fish for eating him up? No, that would be silly, wouldn't it? But do you think maybe God sent the fish to eat him up, to punish him for going in the opposite way than what he asked him to do? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. I think maybe no. We'll see in a little while. You see, Joe was in the belly of the fish for 3 whole days and 3 whole nights. And at the end of the 3rd day, or maybe it was the end of the 3rd night, anyway, at the end of the 3 days and the 3 nights, suddenly there was like, well, a big bump, as if they'd run aground. Suddenly the ground underneath Joe's feet began to... Suddenly there was the biggest burp that you've ever heard in your life. And Joe discovered he could fly! Except he wasn't very good at flying. He managed to fly, well, as far as the beach, actually. He flew through the air, landed with a great big thump on the beach. He got up, he stood up, dusted himself down, and well, maybe sanded himself down, I suppose, and got rid of the seaweed in his hair. And he looked all around, and he kind of noticed that over there was, well, actually he wasn't quite sure what it was over there. So he began to walk across to see what it was. And as he got closer, he realised it was a great big city. And as he got closer again, he realised that it was actually the city of Nineveh. The city that God had asked him to go to in the first place. He went right into the city of Nineveh and he kind of stuck up his hand like that. And he said this. He said, "Stop! Everybody stopped what they were doing. Right from the oldest to the youngest, the richest to the poorest, they came to listen to what Joe had got to say. And Joe began to tell them all about how God had woken him up from a dream and given him a special message, told him to go to the city of Nineveh to tell all the people there that God was really cross with all the wrong things they were doing, saying thinking it was going to knock down all their city unless they said sorry, and how God, Joe didn't want to do that, had gone the other way, got on board the ship, and how the big storm, he told him all about the 3 days, the 3 nights in the belly of the fish, and how the fish had kind of burped him up on the beach, and how now here he was. And all the people, when they heard all those things, they thought, wow, this is going to be true, this is it. And all the people did what Joe thought they might do right from the beginning. All the people said this. They all said, sorry. But they didn't just say sorry. They did something else as well. You see, they did this. They stopped doing all those wrong things. And that's really important, isn't it? Because sometimes we get caught doing something wrong and we say sorry, but we don't really mean it, do we? Sometimes what we actually mean is, I'm sorry I got caught. But you see, if we're really sorry for the wrong things that we do say and think, we have to stop. And so that day the people of Nineveh discovered that God really is a God of love, and he loves everyone from every tribe and nation, and that anyone that will come to him in their prayers and say that they're sorry for the wrong things that they've done, said and thought, he will forgive them. And Jonah, well, he discovered that God's got a plan for his life, the same as he has for everyone. And even when we do things deliberately wrong, that God still wants to bring us back into his plan because he loves us.